The stench hit before the screams did. Rotting bodies stacked in alleyways, black boils splitting open, eyes glazed with fever. Constantinople, once the jewel of the Eastern Empire, had become a city of coughing, weeping, and silence. You'd hear the priest before you saw the corpse cart. He muttered prayers with a cloth over his face, dragging the dead to pits dug in half-frozen soil. Bread vanished, clean water turned foul. Families barred their own doors. Even the emperor trembled. No one was safe. Not the rich, not the holy, not the healers. And you wouldn't last a week. Imagine standing on the bustling harbours of ancient Constantinople, a shimmering jewel of trade and opulence at the heart of the Byzantine Empire. It is here, amidst the lively exchange of goods and the cacophony of merchants bargaining, that an unseen menace silently slinks ashore. Carried by the sacred winds that blow from Egypt, grain ships arrive, a lifeline for the empire but also harbingers of doom. Hidden within their holds, nestled among the precious bounty, are black rats, and upon their backs ride the fleas, tiny and deadly, carriers of Yersinia pestis. In those first whispering days, only rumours flit among the dockworkers, tales of displeasure and misfortune quietly spoken, overshadowed by tales of adventurous voyages and far-off lands. The rats scurry unseen, weaving their way through the cobbled alleys of the city, unfurling a dark tapestry of pestilence and despair. They meander through forgotten corners, carrying a disaster yet to awaken. As the sun dips beneath the horizon, flecks of red tint the sky, a prelude unwitnessed by the bustling city. But the silence is deceiving. Each ship that docks, bold and proud, represents not just a means of survival for the empire, but also the impetus for its unravelling. Cloaked in the deceiving allure of prosperity, these vessels bring not just grains and goods, but a harrowing spectre that lurks within the mundane. Hidden in their very execution, the rodents become silent invaders, their diminutive presence underestimated, their potential for cataclysm grossly misunderstood. Constantinople, resplendent and proud, remains blissfully unaware of the creeping peril. As the rats disperse into the city, their demise goes unnoticed, a foreboding that mounts as the nights stretch darker and quieter. Life goes on, and yet, beneath the facade of normalcy, an eerie tension begins to coil, as rats are found lifeless in the alleys, strewn like the detritus of an untold battle. The whispers of sickness start to gain weight. At first they are feeble echoes, easily dismissed by the high and mighty, exchanged furtively in shadowed taverns. These whispers soon evolve into something visceral, pervading the very air, as strange illnesses tiptoe through dreams and fevered nights plague the populace. What was an abstract concern transitions into an ominous overture, a city ripe for despair, caught in a gripping dance with an invisible force. Denial weaves itself into the fabric of daily life, a shield against the recognition of a burgeoning crisis. In time, whispers ferment into roars, a murmur sustained by the growing tally of fever and death. Society's veneer of control fractures as conjectures transform into acknowledged grim realities. It is the advent of a silent siege, for as the empire's heartland throbs with life, so too does the plague's relentless reach grow unchecked. Constantinople's lofty edifices and bustling squares, symbols of its grandeur, stand unmarked by the shadow silently encroaching upon them. The city, caught unaware, sleeps on a precipice, ignorant of the storm that broils just beyond sight. Empire, for all its might, trembles upon the threshold of its unforeseen unravelling. Slowly, Inescapably, the populace tunes into this dreadful rhythm, comprehending the foreboding truth. The rats, forgotten martyrs of an invisible war, now serve as potent harbingers. Constantinople, now a city caught between fear and foreboding, must reckon with the whispered prophecies turned real. Illness lurks in the humdrum of daily life, a pernicious guest at society's banquet. The once splendid streets veined with inhuman activity now echo with the sounds of anguish and the undertones of a dark requiem. Beneath the grandeur, beneath the gilded facades lies vulnerability unmasked by pestilence. The empire's nobles seek refuge in denial as commoners grasp for reasons, explanations beyond their ken. The rats have carried not just a disease but the instrument of societal discord, instigating a schism that yet remains half-glimpsed. As the rats fall silent, so too does the city's self-assured hum, marred by discordant detritus. And in this shared nightmare, irony reigns supreme. Ceremonies are emptied of meaning, relics and customs rendered impotent against the primal force of an epidemic rampant. Amidst human drama and divine intercession, fear becomes a new currency, and survival the measure of wealth. Yet from the twilight of order, new shapes do take form, as adaptability becomes destiny's forge. Creatures of habit find their narratives rewritten by the plague's sovereign hand, norms overthrown in a society reshaped by unfathomable dread. Constantinople, now effulgent with shades of despair and determination, breathes through survival's new litany. In muted whispers, citizens look to innovation, to the resilience birthed from quiet belief, adapting to life's new harrowing tempo. The city, clawing through shadows toward a hesitant dawn, steels itself as history winds its inexorable course, each day a step beside those who remain faithful to the end. In the teeming streets of ancient Constantinople, where life thrummed with the cries of merchants and the clatter of horses' hooves, the dawn of disaster stirred softly, almost innocuously. It began as a whisper, a delicate cough, a persistent tickle in the throat that bore no sign of its sinister intent. People dismissed it, nodding it off to the damp chill of passing nights or boisterous evenings in the lively taverns they frequented. Yet beneath this quotidian normality, danger lurked, patient and unfathomable, awaiting its moment to strike. Soon the city spoke in tones of tension, as the cough spread among merchants and families, a ripple through the bustling portent of daily life. In homes, the air grew heavy with an unspoken dread as families cradled their illusions of safety, clinging close. Ironically, it was this closeness that unwittingly facilitated the disease's insidious spread, eluding every attempt at control. Even as life continued, pursued by the usual antics of crime and governance, the plague slipped beneath the surface, unnoticed and unchecked, weaving its way through the city's fabric. The tension escalated, the atmosphere resonant as a taut violin string, on the brink of breaking. Yet few comprehended the magnitude of what lay before them. Then came the fever, creeping with a relentless certainty, casting its oppressive heat over afflicted bodies. The fever ripped through the air, replacing the warmth of vibrant markets with the searing heat of suffering. By now, families looked on in helpless terror as their loved ones were consumed by the infernal fury within, their cries swallowed by the walls of their homes. Herbs and concoctions proved futile against the malevolent burn, and despair began to shadow even the brightest corners of hope. Across the city, spiritual leaders, attributing this punishment to divine wrath, gathered the faithful in whispered supplications, their prayers trembling against the chaotic thread of desperation that enveloped all. The fever's assault did not spare the mind, which became a chaotic battlefield. Dreams turned to vivid nightmares, a surreal journey through delirium, as victims languish between reality and terrifying illusions. Hallucinations blurred the edges of the conceivable world, transforming those who were once vibrant and strong into shadows of their former selves. As those around them watched with equal parts horror and impotence, it became evident that even the most powerful and affluent, accustomed to commanding destiny, were humble before this indiscriminate invader. With the mind laid bare, the body bore the plague's outward signature, the dreaded buboes. These painful swellings erupted beneath the skin, betrayals of mortality, marking the inescapable grip of death. Physicians, with their scant knowledge, tried in vain to alleviate the excruciating maladies, the piercing of buboes yielding no salvation beyond torment. Yet even as these marks of suffering festered, they carried undercurrents of meaning, seen by some as divine punishment, by others as cosmic justice. Physical reminders of the ephemeral nature of life and the fragility of man's earthly existence. As victims succumbed, their skins turned an unsettling purple, a spectral shroud heralding the encroaching darkness. This discoloration painted an undeniable chronicle, a vivid reminder to both the living and the dying of death's unyielding tread. In those steel-hued tones lay a grim beauty, a prelude to departure, each tint a chapter in the agonizing story scripted by the plague's merciless hand. Beset by delirium, the afflicted suffered a shattered consciousness, teetering on the brink of sanity. Their cries, at times incoherent and haunted, echoed through homes, disturbing the stillness with the unsettling music of madness. They reeled between lucidity and confusion, imprisoned within the crumbling bastions of their minds. Families stood by, powerless, offering whispered appeals to the heavens, in a desperate bid for reprieve, their hearts breaking under the weight of each incoherent murmur. Efforts to combat the plague proved near futile, as healers did what they could with woeful inadequacy, their knowledge overpowered by the disease's capriciousness. Rituals and remedies, however well-intentioned, did little to stave off the inevitable. Those charged with the care of the dying stood as subdued witnesses to a horror that humbled even the most learned among them. Each failed cure, a reminder of their impotence against the tide of mortality. In the face of such manifest despair, the people of Constantinople grappled with profound choices of surrender against resilience. Amid this veil of suffering, some courted despair, retreating into solitude, while others found strength in communal bonds and the resilience of shared humanity. Stories of courage emerged, heroes unsung striving to alleviate the distress of others, their actions rendering new meaning to nobility. Within the heart of chaos, courage's light flickered, illuminating the darkness with tales of sacrifice and solidarity. As deaths continued, rituals surrounding farewell transformed, becoming ephemeral and swift. What was once a sacred final gesture became hurried and utilitarian, with mass graves a stark testament to necessity's demands. Yet, amid these adaptations, families endeavoured to preserve dignity in departure, finding solace in the traditions they could still observe. Each whisper, token, and tear affirmed memories against the infinite void, testimonies of love persisting where life could not. In the aftermath, connections threaded through shared tragedy endured, binding the living in communal remembrance. Neighbours evolved into confidants, united in grief and survival, and cities rose anew from the ashes of affliction, forever marked by the bonds forged amidst trial. As time wore on, these intangible links glimmered, enduring beyond borders and epochs, as eternal reminders of humanity's unyielding resolve in the face of devastating uncertainty, ensuring that even in the darkest of times, the light of unity, though flickering, never truly died. As the harrowing news of the plague seeped into every corner of Constantinople, fear and desperation spread faster than the disease itself. The emperor, desperate to protect his realm, decreed the city gates be sealed. This decision, fraught with trepidation, all but severed the lifeblood of Constantinople, its vital trade routes. Merchants who once eagerly awaited the dawn to ply their wares now stood helpless, the city's thriving commerce ground to an eerie halt. Where bustling markets had teemed with life, silence reigned, punctuated only by distant haunting cries. Grand structures that defined the city's glory seemed lifeless under the weight of the invisible enemy that lurked inside and beyond its walls. But the measures came too late. By the time the first massive gates clanged shut, the unseen adversary, not soldiers, but a deadly sickness borne by fleas and rats, had already infiltrated. Constantinople, instead of a sanctuary, now felt like a grand prison. Within days, markets emptied, not just of life but of goods, as imports ceased and panic took hold. Citizens began hoarding everything they could: food, water, herbs and talismans, hoping to ward off the unseen evil. The city, poised proudly on the precipice of empire, now seemed a tomb in waiting, its citizens isolated from both the outside world and any hope of immediate salvation. With fear mounting, the people of Constantinople turned to their faith, seeking divine intervention to halt the plague's relentless advance. Churches became crowded sanctuaries, filled with a mix of hope and desperation. The wealthy retreated to private chapels, while the masses gathered in communal spaces, lighting candles and placing their faith in the icons that adorned stone walls. Priests once composed now shared the same anxious furrows as their congregants, understanding the fracture between spiritual solace and earthly suffering. Yet even as they prayed, the contrast of faith meeting fate was glaring. Religious processions traversed the hushed streets, altars heavy with relics, splinters of wood, bone fragments, believed to be touched by saints. Incense wafted thickly, momentarily masking the acrid scent that seeped from houses filled with the dying. The unity of prayer echoed resilience, though its vigour only magnified the irony of an unwavering hope in the face of brutal reality. In grim neighbourhoods, death's triumph became starkly visible. Families watched loved ones fall, unwilling to keep the decaying bodies of kin within their homes. Day by day, doorways bore the grim mark of tragedy, bodies left to warn passers-by of their fate. These silent sentinels were not merely morbid markers, but part of the daily reality. The state, stretched to breaking, could no longer efficiently remove the dead, compelling neighbours to fend for themselves. Fear overshadowed friendship, infecting acts of kindness with the dread of contagion. For those forced to navigate the narrow streets, the sight of door-bound bodies became as mundane as the architecture around them. The stench of death clung persistently, a spectral presence signalling the city's descent. Scientific understanding gave way to superstition, as even breathing became perilous. The air, once filled with the sweet scent of incense and the Bosporus's brine, now carried death. In whispered conversations, every exhalation became suspect, laden with malevolent potential. Citizens resorted to covering mouths with vinegar-soaked cloths, a fruitless ritual born of desperation. Merchants, still hoping to trade, performed transactions in eerie silence, relying on gestures. Ironically, the fear fed on its own spread, each breath inhaling not only air but suspicion and growing isolation. In his distant halls, Emperor Justinian grappled with the empire's peril, issuing decrees to exert rapidly slipping control. Governance became a performance of managing chaos. Sealing the city and appealing for divine deliverance, he faced the realization that Plact respected no decrees, no social standing. Soldiers patrolled emptying streets, succumbing to the silent threat. His decrees, typically commanding, now trembled with desperation, reflecting not imperial might but the common mortality of all within the empire's walls. Whole families vanished with silent efficiency. Homes filled with laughter turned silent, breakfast tables half set, toys scattered, lives extinguished overnight. These disappearances, unceremonious, followed no announcements. One day full of life, the next muted silence reigned, suspending time. The spectre of obliteration loomed, compressing time, distorting life's rhythm, as each new day bore gifts touched by despair, riddled with the unseen reaper's shadow. Marketplaces once buzzing now lay abandoned, haunted by silence where commerce had thrived. Essential hubs of interaction, these spaces stood desolate, stalls of unsaleable goods, relics of an economy rattled to its core, spoke of what had been. Traders cloaked in resilience faced an immovable epidemic, their valour stymied as currency and pestilence vexed commerce. These vibrant centres, the heartbeats of daily life, now murmured tales of survival, testaments to a society bowed by uncertainty. In these dark times, Constantinople turned desperately introspective, converging faith and desperation. Churches served as refugees, offering solace from burdens unbearable. Priests beyond religious guidance hoped to inspire, their own struggles apparent against the enormity of each lamentation. Gathered congregants, voices lifted skyward, mingled time-honoured praise with pleas raw-edged by urgency. Rituals binding faith echoed through empty streets, invoking saints' venerable guard. Salvation sought in any form resonated the city's endurance, echoing a collective yearning for mercy divine. In the swirling chaos of Constantinople, gravediggers became the unsung, macabre heroes of a city drowning in despair. Once sturdy and resilient, these men quickly became gaunt as they carried out a job no one else dared to take on. They were no strangers to death, having spent years dealing with the city's natural cycles of mortality. But the plague descended with an overwhelming force, and their shovels and strength were no match for the relentless tide of bodies that filled the city streets each morning. As each sunrise revealed more victims of the plague, a dark irony emerged. Those who toiled to bury the fallen soon fell victim to the cruel sweep of death themselves. Rotten wooden carts, overflowing with corpses, lined the streets, some abandoned mid-journey, left to putrefy under the blistering sun. Constantinople, a necropolis of sorrow, could no longer offer the dead the dignity of ritual or reverence. Graves became shallow trenches dug in haste, and the livid community faced their worst fears, embodied in piles of bodies lying beneath an uncaring sky. The stench was suffocating, a sulphurous and unending fog that crept into bones and walls. People slipped from anxiety into panic, realizing that no amount of prayer or wealth could alter the dark fate hovering over them. Within the ancient stone homes of Constantinople, life flickered and faded like a candle's last embers. What once held laughter and warmth now lay shrouded in eerie silence, broken only by the muffled sobs of survivors or the whispered prayers to a distant and seemingly indifferent god. Whole families lay together where they fell, as if felled by some grim dance of death. Household rhythms vanished, replaced by the steady and chilling beat of hearts slowing under the plague's hold. These homes, which had stood strong against sieges, now became silent tombs, heavy with the memories of a life snuffed out. To those who dared pass by, the pervasive quiet was more terrifying than any cries of grief, for each silent home was a grim reminder of despair and the waiting promise of death. Those who peered through cracks often lost their breath at the sight of families lifeless in an eternal embrace. And so neighbours kept their distance, shunning not only the threat of contagion, but also the harsh reality of a fate they feared to encounter. The Byzantine government, a formidable force of control and organisation, found itself caught in the plague's relentless grip. Accustomed to wielding power with precision, officials faced a formless adversary, immune to laws or decrees. Strategies crumbled as swiftly as the parchment they were penned on. Despite desperate efforts to manage the chaos, every attempt at governance faltered under the weight of collapsing infrastructure and the widespread fear that infected the populace. Even within the regal corridors of the Palace of Blackernay, voices of authority were mute against the tide. Orders for mass interment floundered as labourers succumbed to the same fate they sought to manage. Daily proclamations of resolve were no match for the decaying systems of power, widening the gulf between a frantic citizenry and a government adrift. As despair deepened, families seized upon grim measures, turning towards the sea as a last resort in their battle against overwhelming odds. The act of casting bodies into the waters was not done on impulse. It was a decision heavy with desperation. The great harbour, usually a place of regal events and lively trade, transformed into a sombre tableau, with boats laden with the deceased setting sail for watery graves. Families approached the sea at dusk, lowering their kin to the currents with murmured prayers and hopes for some semblance of peace. Fishermen witnessed their nets yield remnants of humanity rather than fish, their usual bounty supplanted by this horrifying catch. The sea, vast and indifferent, became another cemetery for Constantinople, a final resting place that transcended maps and marked history's ebbs and flows. Across the city, the pestilence's grip was felt in every breath, the air thick with the scent of decay. This oppressive stench clung to every surface, leaving no corner untouched. It warned of plague's impartiality, its cruel embrace of all. Incense burned continuously in churches, mingling with whispered prayers, and failing in its attempt to mask the omnipresent odour. Merchants seized opportunity amidst despair, offering aromatic herbs to provide relief however fleeting. The very air, now a herald of finality, reminded citizens incessantly of the death that walked among them. For those spared by the plague, life was an existence defined by loss. Relationships tested by adversity unravelled under the strain, community bonds weakened by suspicion and fear. Doors remained shut, keeping out both disease and the risk of compassion. Yet defiance simmered beneath the surface, resilience seeding hope among those who gathered in agora and forums. Though tradition faltered, new norms emerged, and the city braced itself for a tomorrow beyond the current anguish. Survivors armoured their hearts, yearning for a brighter future, as stories of old promised survival amidst the wreckage. The survivors bore a heavy burden, grappling with trauma that lingered like unseen wounds. Streets once bustling now echoed only with memories of those lost. The experience of survival was not joy, but a hollow endurance. communities fragmented by loss leaned on fragile hope to stitch broken bonds. Social gatherings slowly rebuilt, yet changed, as shared stories of tragedy and resilience wove a tapestry of memory and redemption. By finding strength in unity, citizens glimpsed a future beyond the shadows, their shared history transforming into a foundation for renewal. In the heart of Constantinople, the imperial palace stood as a bastion of opulence and power. Yet in those days of plague, its grandeur was shrouded in fear. Whispers swept through the marble corridors, carried by anxious courtiers and servants who darted glances toward the emperor's chambers. News that the plague had reached the emperor spread like wildfire, unravelling the fragile fabric of imperial invulnerability. The once vibrant palace, a hub of political manoeuvring and opulent celebrations, now echoed with an ominous silence. Rats had been the harbingers, dying in the streets, but none could have anticipated that even the emperor was not immune. Physicians draped in robes of haste and worry found themselves at a loss. Their remedies, a mixture of herbs and hope, seemed powerless against the fever that gripped the emperor. It began innocuously, just a cough, a symptom easily dismissed in the vast incense-heavy halls. But soon fever followed, and with it dread seeped into the palace as the emperor's health spiralled downward. Courtiers, wary of contagion, kept their distance, their duty to the state at war with their survival instincts. Within this labyrinth of fear, Empress Theodora emerged as a figure of authority, her resolve a beacon amid the encroaching shadows. Inside the emperor's chamber, the air was thick with the scent of medicinal herbs and desperation. Day blended into night as Justinian lay feverish, his dreams suffused with the chaos of the plague-ridden city beyond. His attendants moved in a solemn dance, offering whispered prayers alongside failing remedies. The tapestry of victories adorning his walls now seemed a cruel mockery of his current struggle. Meanwhile, outside, the plague wreaked havoc, and with the emperor stricken, the threat loomed larger than life. Rumours of his condition crept into every corner of the city, mingling with the smoke of funeral pyres. The question lingered in hushed tones. Would this intangible foe topple an empire in ways that neither sword nor siege could? Across the empire, villages and cities alike held their breath. Justinian was not merely an emperor, he embodied the divine order, the axis on which their world spun. His illness threatened not only succession, but the stability of a civilization already frayed and vulnerable. The empress, donning the mantle of leadership, navigated the Byzantine court's treacherous waters with unyielding determination. Traders and generals alike hesitated, their every decision shadowed by the uncertainty of the throne. For them, the question of survival was compounded by the suspense of Justinian's fate, a fear of unravelling that reached beyond the palace walls. In these dire straits, Theodora's leadership shone unwaveringly. Her keen political acumen ensured that while the emperor was trapped in his feverish struggle, the empire remained afloat. She orchestrated alliances and dictated policy, with a command that rivaled Justinian's own, in better times, proving the depth of her resolve amid crisis. The authority she wielded reminded Constantinople that the imperial family was still intact, embodying strength in unity and continuity in chaos. Meanwhile, physicians navigated a cultural crossroad, employing both earthly remedies and spiritual rites to combat the unseen enemy within the emperor. Their efforts, though seemingly disparate, mirrored the existential struggle of an empire grappling with its own fragility. Incantations mingled with the application of ointments, as hope wove itself into both science and faith. This amalgamation of medicine and mysticism was less about the actual healing of the emperor's body and more about maintaining the morale of his court, a symbol of perseverance, as potent as any tonic. Outside the palace, rumours thrived like an ecosystem of their own. Tales of Justinian's demise or miraculous recovery filled market squares, morphing with each retelling. These whispers, though fed by fear, were not entirely malicious. They reflected a populace desperate for meaning amid devastation, clinging to every scrap of information as anchor points in a world rapidly unfamiliar. Across Constantinople, citizens dealt with their own plights, their lives intertwined with the emperor's as they fluctuated between hope and despair. For weeks, a tense equilibrium hung in the palace like a blade suspended by a thread. Every day felt like a countdown to a finality that danced just out of reach. Justinian's condition seemed to teeter at the edge, as if mocking their fears. Yet against the odds, Justinian did not succumb. As if by divine intercession or sheer tenacity, his fever eventually broke, pulling him back from the brink. His survival was a Pyrrhic victory, one that underscored his vulnerability, and the empire's collective sigh of relief. Re-emerging, thinner and frailer, Justinian's return was not just a personal triumph, but a galvanizing force for the empire. His endurance spoke to a resilience that resonated throughout Constantinople, symbolizing the potential to persevere amid adversity. Meanwhile, Theodora's silent strength was celebrated, her role during Justinian's illness, bringing into the open the true depth of her leadership. Historians and citizens alike recognized her contribution to the empire's stability, marking her actions as a testament to human strength over divine right. The storm of uncertainty began to pass, leaving behind a battered but standing empire. In reflection, the city understood how precarious their existence was, yet also how incredibly resilient. With Justinian at the helm once more, supported by Theodora's quiet prowess, the Byzantine Empire continued its legacy, better prepared for whatever fate lay beyond the horizon. Each citizen became part of a tapestry stitched with survival, poised to forge onward under the constant gaze of history's watchful eye. In the aftermath of the plague's initial onslaught, Constantinople's once vibrant streets transform into eerie corridors of silence. The echoes of life, laughter, chatter, the clamour of markets, fade, leaving only ghostly sobs and the rattling of empty carts. In this quiet chaos, a new order emerges. Dogs, once cherished companions or dismissed nuisances, seize control of the now desolate thoroughfares. Abandoned by owners who perished or lay weak, these creatures shed domestication, reverting to primal survival instincts. Driven by the pungent scent of rot, they gorge on the corpses littering the city, staging a macabre takeover of civilization's remains. Packs of hungry, scrappy canines prowl the alleyways, contending with rats over human flesh, their lean forms swelling with ingested death. Yet this grim abundance is a poisoned gift, for the plague knows no master, sparing neither nobleman nor scavenger. As the dogs indulge, they ingest not sustenance but a disease, their end written in each bite. Amidst such devastation, desperation breeds desperation. As the thin line between sustenance and squalor blurs, once scoffing city dwellers now eye the feasting dogs with envious hunger. Rumours swirl of neighbours resorting to consuming the very animals gnawing the dead. The city mutates into a dark theatre of survival, its inhabitants pushed to unimaginable acts just to survive, cannibalising beloved creatures who once nestled by their fires. This decision is not made lightly. It is a grim testament to the lengths people go, clawing for survival in a world stripped of sanity. Ironically, consuming diseased animals is folly of its own, but logic withers when faced with starvation's roaring jaws. Families huddled in ruins wrestle with ghost of conscience as survival becomes a cruel arbiter of choices made. The once vibrant city hums now with the dissonant symphony of beasts, an unsettling echo replacing the heartbeat of human enterprise. Work ceases, families barricade themselves against an invisible foe, and the brave or the desperate alone walk the spectral streets. Dogs traverse these empty paths, their barks a mournful accompaniment to a city's last whispers. Yet the chorus quiets as the plague claims the dogs too. Their bodies join the growing heaps of decay, layering streets with an oppressive silence. This quiet, more daunting than the clamour of life, lies most profound. For those who remain, each empty avenue becomes a haunting monument to a vanished past. Nature's implacable cycle unfolds with brutal clarity. As humans yield to animal scavengers, they too fall prey to the same fate. Victims of the plague's indifferent hand, dogs and rats perish, marking nature's dominance over life, repudiating human control illusions. This merciless equalizer dissolves society's divides, reducing all to survival or demise. The cityscape, once teeming with vigour, fades into equilibrium's grim restoration. Life reduced to its simplest forms. Predator and prey classifications collapse under disease's reign. Such scenes underscore humans' precarious hold on civilization, narrated not by victory, but by survival amidst obliteration's inevitabilities. In the midst of chaos, humans and animals, though unwilling allies, share an unspoken fraternity of suffering. Desperate survival serves as the binding narrative in this twisted communion, a ghostly camaraderie wrought by shared survival struggles forms amongst the city's remnants. Scattered records hint at this unlikely bond, tales of a silent kinship growing from unspeakable necessity. As survivors brave empty streets, they sense a connection in the shared struggle with the trailing animals. Despite the horror, these animals offer solace, a reminder of connections inherent in them in different times. Yet the plague marches on, a remorseless brute erasing all. A universal truth emerges, binding man and beast alike. Survival is the shared primitive story. In the vacuum of hope, stories weave themselves into the cultural tapestry. Dogs transform from companions to scavengers, carve their places into the survivor's memory. These stories, whispered in the safety of firelight, speak of the city, physical transformation, and deep psychological shifts alike. In these tales, dogs become spectral figures, akin to Charon, ferrying not souls but bodies beneath Constantinople's weeping heavens. The narratives echo with eerie charm and dark irony, crystallizing as folklore. They capture a torn world where life and death intermingle in the shadow of forgotten societal borders. Amidst the ruins lies a perverse nostalgia for what once thrived. Remnants tell stories of life halted, tables set with uneaten meals, collars empty of the pets they once graced. Scavengers, unwitting archivists, create a tableau of paused life, a time capsule ruptured by calamity. These remnants become symbols of resilience, narratives of adaptation etched within the city's psyche. In every broken pottery piece or tattered garment, survivors glean lessons of shared struggle. Humans and dogs alike adapt. Each demonstrates an instinctual survival welded into the fabric older than any city. Constantinople, shadowed by defeat but buoyed by survival's raw tenacity, learns bitter lessons about humanity's fragility. The shared living force between leaders and scholars, peasants and priests' shifts, revealing necessary changes wrought by ancient calamities. Pandemic's legacies, grim yet enlightening, linger, foreshadowing global interactions and survival instincts. In the plague-ravaged corridors of ancient Constantinople, physicians clung to old traditions as their compass. The concept of humour's orchestrated medical thought. Imbalance, they believed, was the root of all ailments. Leeches, those unsightly creatures, were paradoxically seen as miracles in disguise. They feasted on blood, a symbolic gesture to draw out nature's malady. Even as whispers of skepticism swirled, families surrendered their loved ones to this ritual, skin dotted with scars marking a desperate pursuit of life amid the reign of death. The spectre of failure hovered silently over these practitioners. Success was elusive, but to try was better than to resign. Beside the leech's lifeless grip, the air brimmed with fragrance. Rosemary and thyme smoked in homes as both medicine and amulet. Apothecaries' shelves brimmed with promises, as burns of incense snaked through sanctuaries, attempting to cleanse the miasmas, the unseen vapours believed to carry doom. Frankincense and myrrh, their soothing tendrils, served as both mask and memento, countering the acrid scent of decay with hope. Priests swung thuribles in smoky arcs, each cloud a prayer, a tangible attempt to confront an invisible foe. As despair deepened, faith in these ancient aromas clung to the living like a lifeline amid uncertainty. When herbs and smoke proved impotent, sharp steel cut through the dread. Surgeons, though primitive, targeted the unsightly buboes that swelled and festered. With blade in hand, they sliced to release the tension within. Though many patients succumbed to infection, their bodies unable to bear this intrusion. Lymphatic masses burst under pressure, oozing a sinister testament to the body's inner warfare. These operations often closed with more death than recovery. Yet the courage to endure even such violent measures spoke to the will to live when surrounded by shadows. Intertwining with science was the power of spirit, for the divine was not just a comfort, but a participant in healing. Churches became both refuge and fortress, resonating with hymns that filled the hearts of the fearful with echoes of heavenly intercession. Processions carried venerable relics, bones of saints, shreds of sacred cloth, imbued with divine authority, as crowds stretched forth desperate hands to touch the eternity they harboured. Such artefacts grew precious, valued beyond mere gold, as witnesses anchored in faith but adrift in reality. For many biblical symbols offered solace, the ritual smearing of ashes was a profound gesture, a metaphorical embrace of humility before the divine. Ashes, consecrated and distributed among the faithful, became a shield of devotion against the plague's wrath. Deep within this simple, dusty act lay a tapestry of stories, of mortal cycles and divine purges, pagan threads interwoven into Christian fabric. These ashes carried a sobering irony, offering strength through their reminder. Life itself inevitably returns to dust. Meanwhile, the weave of superstition mingled freely with plague-born reality. Every shadow seemed an omen, every charm a safeguard. Amulets adorned the necks and doorways, incantations clinging to their surfaces, warding off invisible adversaries lurking near. The stories of salt spills and ladder crossings crowded taverns, sparking fear among all, be they logical or not. These rituals, steeped in ancient fear, grew potent as desperation sought the familiar embrace of tradition amongst chaos. Even the stars themselves became part of the equation. With eyes cast heavenward, physicians sought clarity in cosmic choreography. Celestial signs, they argued, mapped the maladies below. Astrology, a blend of scientific inquiry and mystical allure, presented a narrative both captivating and comforting. These celestial interpretations proposed patterns where chaos prevailed, providing maps not just of skies but of deep-rooted hope. Under Emperor Justinian, the crumbling city became a stage for grandiose rituals, uniting the divine with governance. Clergy, robed in elaborate vestments, led masses through the streets in fervent prayer, employing both spectacle and devotion to rally strength within the populace, a grand design of pageantry against plague's relentless dance. The emperor stood as an emblem of divine favour and earthly rule, a beacon of hope, though the silent truth of the dying lay outside their grand composition's reach. In this whirlpool of faith and logic, Constantinople's story unfolded through a fusion of science's nascent whispers and folklore's unwavering hold. Healers reached across the empire for wisdom, merging proven knowledge with mystical tales. The entwining of tested beliefs and whispered legends gave birth to a narrative shimmering with survival's uncertain light. And thus resilience rallied amidst ruin. Medicine, faith and folklore combined into a collective portrait of tenacity. People, bound by grim circumstances, carved their legacy of perseverance with every action, leaving a history marked by endurance rather than defeat. As they walked alongside death through those besieged streets, they quietly battled, crafting a living testament to humanity's relentless hope. In the Byzantine Empire, the sea was the lifeline that connected distant lands, ferrying goods that fueled its prosperity. The harbours of Constantinople, a bustling nucleus of trade, echoed with the sounds of merchants and sailors unloading treasures from across the empire. Timber from the north, spices from the east and grain from Egypt all flowed into the city, their arrival a testament to the empire's wealth. Yet, as plague silently infiltrated the land, these bustling trade routes became the very veins of despair. Rats bearing fatal fleas stowed away amidst the cargo, converting these corridors of commerce into channels of death. The arrival of ships was once a sign of vitality, but this soon changed as fevered rumours of plague spread like wildfire. Desperate measures saw the sick thrown overboard in a futile attempt to cleanse the vessels. Ports vital yet naive struggled to decide whether to welcome the much-needed trade or slam their gates shut. In the end, port cities like Alexandria and Carthage became epicentres of the disease. Where commerce had been king, now there loomed the shadow of pestilence, muting the vibrant exchanges of bustling docks to whispers of fear. Merchants, once eager participants in lively markets, found the atmosphere thick with dread. Each coin exchanged a potential death sentence. For sailors, the sea's familiar embrace became hostile. Ships, once symbols of adventure and opportunity, now carried the burden of plague. Tales of ghost ships, drifting aimlessly with their crews felled by illness-haunted seafarers. The stories blurred the line between myth and grim reality, fueling superstition and spreading panic along coastal communities. Captains trapped between preserving their livelihoods and safeguarding their crews turned to age-old rituals, carving symbols into their ships and offering sacrifices to ancient ocean gods. Yet the plague remained relentless, a predator unseen and unstoppable. As merchants faced economic ruin, the backbone of Byzantine commerce, so carefully built over centuries, buckled. Strategies that once bred fortunes now lay in tatters, as goods piled up behind quarantined walls. In desperation, rivals forged alliances, pooling resources to try and maintain vital trade routes. However, the plague's insidious reach thwarted their efforts, defying human ingenuity and adaptation alike. Fishermen, too, felt the plague's sting. Their hands, once skillful in the art of the catch, now trembled with uncertainty as colleagues fell ill and fish grew scarce. Market stalls once brimming with the ocean's bounty stood empty, transformed into silent monuments to a thriving trade now vanished. Even amidst the despair, commerce adjusted within its constraints. Certain commodities, once mundane, became precious, as spices were sought to ward off illness, and textiles fashioned into crude masks. Barter systems rose where currency failed, and new trade routes emerged, winding through less impacted regions. Merchants, those artisans of wealth, adapted quickly, evolving practices in response to the empire's shifting needs. Homegrown economies flourished as communities turned inward, relying on their ingenuity and resilience to weather the loss. Beyond trade and livelihood, the plague also altered the empire's social fabric. Festivals, once vibrant celebrations of community life, turned sombre, overshadowed by reminders of mortality. The joy of carnivals gave way to muted gatherings, where traditions endured in defiance of death's spectre. In private, bereaved families shared stories, finding solace in the resilience of their shared humanity. Music and laughter persisted, albeit tinged with irony, as people sought to celebrate life even amidst profound loss. In this altered world, the plague became a grim companion, woven into the empire's daily existence. Constantinople's inhabitants learned to navigate its lethal grasp, with rituals both age-old and newly conceived. Death, once a foreign threat, became a part of life's rhythm, etched into tales and folklore alive with cautionary wisdom. Embracing this grim new reality, the people of Byzantium forged an unyielding resilience, reshaping their world's ethos with a humour born of defiance. In the midst of suffering, faith faced its own transformation. Believers sought answers in divine narratives, their relationships with faith reshaped by questions unanswered. The church, amid social chaos, became a beacon of solace and structure, offering hope and guidance. Through simple acts of devotion, lighting candles, venerating saints, individuals found a sense of spiritual grace and continuity, bolstering their courage against the indifferent expanse of the universe. Ultimately, the plague left an indelible mark on Byzantium, redefining the empire's identity through its trials. While weakened, it had not perished. Lessons learned amid adversity fostered a renewed spirit, emphasizing compassion and adaptability. As the people of Constantinople emerged from the plague's shadow, they carried with them a newfound understanding of resilience and survival, bearing the scars of a fellowship forged in storm, poised to rebuild with a cautious hope for the future. In the haunting aftermath of the plague, Constantinople's once vibrant streets echo with the cries of orphaned children, their small figures casting long shadows against the towering city walls. These young souls, stripped of parental care, form clusters for protection and warmth, finding reluctant leaders among the oldest. Together they navigate a perilous cityscape, transformed into a labyrinth of survival. Without the gentle guidance of adults, each day unfolds as a desperate quest for food. Rifling through the pockets of the deceased and rummaging through the remains of abandoned homes becomes their new reality. In whispered tones, they share memories of a time before the plague, a time of family, laughter, and warmth, now slipping irretrievably into the past. These children, embodying resilience in its rawest form, are forced to grow up too soon, dancing a precarious line between survival and loss. As the plague tightens its grip, hunger becomes a relentless, insidious force, haunting the survivors. The once bustling marketplaces, filled with the rich aromas of spices and produce, now stand eerily silent, the vibrant colours of trade replaced by the grey desolation of abandonment. Grain storage houses, symbols of sustenance, bear witness to frantic raids as desperation turns into violence. Gold, previously a symbol of power and prosperity, loses its lustre. It cannot be eaten nor exchanged for essentials. The absence of food fractures families who hide their meagre rations from neighbours and former friends, creating a chasm where community once thrived. The essence of survival becomes a grinding test of endurance, stripping away the veneer of civilization to reveal a raw, primal struggle. The streets, once alive with the bustling activity of traders peddling goods, now resemble ghostly avenues lined with abandoned shops, their doors ajar and contents plundered. The vibrant displays of silk and spices are replaced by emptiness, marking the collapse of an intricate economic web that sustained the empire. With merchants either perished or fled, the rhythm of daily life, once dictated by trade, falls silent. The resulting void strikes at the heart of a society reliant on commerce, illustrating a painful truth. The interconnectedness that once held the city together has unravelled. The absence of law and order becomes patently clear as officials, bound by the instinct for self-preservation, abandon their posts. The reliable structure of Byzantine legal tradition crumbles, leaving a void quickly filled by raw, unchecked desperation. Military forces, once the bastion of protection and order, fall into chaos. Soldiers, driven by the same hunger and instability as the city's civilians, transform their skills from defence to looting. Sacred spaces, once revered havens of peace, become targets, looted for their meagre promises of wealth and survival. Among the Byzantine soldiers, a dark transformation unfolds as they cast aside their duties in favour of pillaging. Military men, faced with their own desperation, turn on the city they once swore to protect. In scenes of heartbreaking irony, holy places, symbols of divine refuge, become sites of sacrilege. Chalices and icons looted without reverence serve as brutal reminders of civilization's fragility against the relentless despair brought by the plague. The stark irony is palpable. Those tasked with preserving peace instead sow further chaos, illustrating a desperate cycle of broken duty and lost humanity. The once cherished gold, a cornerstone of economic stability, loses its cherished value as the plague ravages Constantinople. Financial institutions lie dormant. Transactions that once thrived now seem meaningless. Shimmering coins are exchanged in desperate trades for basic necessities: food, shelter, a brief moment of security. The decline of wealth parallels a broader economic decay, forcing a rethink of what is truly valuable amidst survival. Residents find richness not in material wealth, but in the very act of enduring. The shift from opulence to essential survival encapsulates Constantinople's fall, transforming the city into a canvas of human tenacity. The devastation of the plague strikes deeply at the social fabric itself, levelling distinctions among classes and blurring the lines between nobility and peasantry, merchant and artisan. Once separated by privilege, all are united in shared vulnerability. The constructs of class and status dissolve amidst the ravages of pestilence, revealing a commonality that defies societal norms. These dissolving hierarchies foster unlikely alliances as individuals band together to face a common enemy. The loss of structure becomes a backdrop against which human resilience and adaptability play out, reframing humanity in a landscape marked by tragedy. In a search for safety, the people of Constantinople embark on a frantic quest for sanctuary. Hidden passages, abandoned monasteries and catacombs become unlikely refuges for those seeking respite from the chaos. These retreats offer fleeting moments of community, where the stories of a shared past are whispered in the shadows. Despite the encroaching darkness, these hidden enclaves shelter sparks of humanity, acting as temporary beacons of hope. Surprisingly, moments of humanity surface amid the city's devastation. With social norms upended, genuine connections form. Acts of selflessness emerge, strangers sharing scarce food or medicine, forging bonds that transform despair into survival. Within this ruin, whispers of hope refuse to die. The city's spirit clings to life, defying destruction. As survivors gather scraps of the old world, Constantinople's legacy is rewritten, a tapestry woven from resilience, unity, and the indomitable human spirit. In the wake of the plague's retreat, silence enveloped Constantinople like a shroud, broken only by the distant cries of the bereaved and the ominous cawing of crows. Streets that once bustled with the vibrant tapestry of daily life now lay desolate, their cobblestones haunting reminders of the countless feet that trod them. The once busy thoroughfare of Macy was transformed into a mournful path, echoing with the absence of laughter and commerce. The shadows cast by the sun seemed to reach further, as if the city itself was yearning for its lost inhabitants. In its deserted corners lay remnants of a bygone era, a child's forgotten doll, an overturned cart with spoils long pilfered, and stores whose treasures lay beyond doors no one dared open. Market squares once echoing with the clamour of merchants and the joy of festivities stood eerily vacant. Statues, some defaced and others untouched, bore silent witness to a world irrevocably altered, as if mourning in stone. Survivors filled the city with a new kind of quiet, speaking in whispers rather than the robust tones of trade and revelry. Words were cautious, hushed as if fearing to summon the plague anew. Conversation shifted to half-spoken confessions and exchanges of shared grief, with groups huddling together for solace and warmth. Amidst this newfound solitude simmered suspicion, each wary glance a testament to an unspoken fear of unknown ailments or hidden betrayals. Society, once defined by its bustling agoras, shrank into intimate circles of tentative trust, each bond as fragile as the city around them. The dead lingered in memories, casting shadows across whispered words, while the challenges of survival demanded attention to the practical. The search for sustenance, the management of decay, the monumental task of rebuilding a shattered community. Yet, beneath the weight of despair lay a resilient hope for renewal, a quiet determination to recreate what had been lost. The echoes of lost professions hung in the air, the silence punctuated by the absence of once familiar sounds. Gone were the clanging forges of blacksmiths and the bustle of bakers' shops. Artisans' tools lay idle in their workshops, forgotten amid half-finished pieces that spoke of interrupted stories. Market stalls and bathhouses, once hubbub with life, became mere shadows in the city's tapestry. Where skilled hands had once laboured tirelessly, now lay traces of vanished trades. Mute witnesses to the lives that no longer flickered to life. The city bore this loss sharply, for For each lost trade and silenced industry severed ties that once bound the community, leaving a populace adrift in unfamiliar silence. The plague dealt not just with physical devastation, but stirred a profound spiritual crisis. Sacred spaces brimming with once steady faith now echoed with unanswered questions. The faithful, seeking comfort, found only the echoes of unanswered prayers, grappling with their disillusionment. Sacred relics received renewed fervour as people sought meaning within the tumult. In the pervasive uncertainty, some turned towards superstition and old omens, grasping for signs within the unknown. Yet, as stone saints gazed serenely from frescoes, even the devout wavered, feeling distant from divine consolation. This crisis reshaped the spiritual landscape, leaving worshippers wrestling with eternal questions amidst worldly devastation. Yet, amid darkness, acts of kindness shone like beacons, piercing the fog of despair. There were tales of those risking life to soothe the afflicted, of merchants offering goods without thought of profit. Gifts were given freely, understanding transcending commerce. These gestures were born not solely of duty, but a profound recognition of shared humanity. The wealthy opened their homes. Religious orders cared for the orphaned and sick. These acts fortified community spirit, underscoring resilience that would outlive the tragedy. A fabric of collective will was woven from such acts, a steadfast tapestry spanning the bleakest pages of history. The breakdown of order brought forth unorthodox governance. With systems crumbling, new structures formed from necessity. Religious leaders embraced civic roles, directing amidst chaos. Laws adapted to daily challenges of survival, crafted by councils of those unswayed by devastation, focused on continuity. Not all power wielded came from altruism, as some exploited disorder for control. They demanded tribute for absolution, crafting new power dynamics amid chaos. From this balance of altruism and exploitation, a new social order emerged, intermingling ancient adherences with urgent needs for adaptation. Not even the aristocracy escaped untouched by death's inevitable sweep. Grand estates became gilded traps, their wealth no shield against the universal threat. Empty banquet halls and stained tapestries became epitaphs of loss for the privileged as well. Some attempted futile imitations of past splendour, momentary distractions from reality's grip. Behind closed gatherings, fear still whispered. Wealth proved no guarantee against mortality, and the elite grappled with prospects of a future reshaped by indiscriminate disease, where traditional safety yielded to survival's exigency. As the plague waned, rebuilding arose from its ashes. This reconstruction required uniting fragmented societies, reviving professions, revamping constants. Slowly, survivors rebuilt bridges of trade and kinships formed of necessity, creating new tenets to replace those lost. Forgotten vocations found resurgence. Knowledge passed reluctantly to new hands. Constant reimagining was required, shedding previous preconceptions in favour of newfound unity. In spite of all, survivors chose to not desecrate their past, but to carry its lessons into a hopeful future. The legacy of the plague lingered beyond stones, shaping the city's enduring narrative. Lessons of adversity became immortal in story and song. Survivors bore history's weight, ensuring future generations would inherit tales not just of despair, but of human resilience. Constantinople had been through fires and survived, creating a testament of defiance against its past and an unwavering pledge to thrive beyond shadowed histories. As modern echoes of ancient struggles resounded, viewers of this narrative are invited to walk this journey of survival and resilience. please like and subscribe to continue exploring the relics of human persistence.